Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, I'm Tammy. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you. I'm Yael.
Yael, where are you right now?
I am in Philadelphia, which is where I live with my family.
Yeah.
And I am sitting in my kitchen, which I decluttered madly before I turned on the screen.
Well, yeah,
But it has the best light.
I have a personal organizing business, so next time you need help, I'll help you.
Oh wow, my husband just looked up from the real. I'm in like the breakfast nook. Ooh, you are so organized. Look at that. That's amazing.
Oh, those are my threads.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Yael.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you? Hi, guys.
I'm good.
Hi, Tammy. Hi, Hearts. How are you?
We're good.
I'm glad.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. What are you eating?
Popcorn. What else is there to eat?
Ooh, popcorn. That's a good snack.
With raisins.
Mm.
Oh,
I'm getting popcorn on the cob tomorrow from my farm box.
ooh, that's fun.
It is. I'm going to give it to my grandkids.
Oh, they'll love it.
Popcorn and
What does
I
that
do
look
not
like?
get
How does
along
that
very well.
even, what is it? I never saw that or heard of that.
It's like popcorn is corn, so it grows on a cob, and usually it's removed from the cob and you buy it. But this is, they just left it on the cob, and you stick the cob in the microwave for how they give you the instructions, and then you get this cob of popcorn.
You're supposed to put it in a brown paper bag, but I highly recommend, if you're not mess averse, letting it go without the bag, because then the kids can watch it pop on
Right.
the
Well, that's what we've done. I mean, I don't get to do things like that with my kids these days. So that's whatever their parents want to do.
Hi, Ravari.
Hello.
Hey, we were just talking about your children getting
Mm,
popcorn from me tomorrow.
mm. They'll be
On
happy
cob.
with that.
You're going to get a cob of it.
Is our video showing up, by the way?
Yep, you're right there. Right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, Avery's doing something.
I'm getting the spreadsheet,
Oh.
the source sheet.
Okay.
Oh, was there a source sheet? Did I miss that?
There
Well,
is one.
today. Sorry, Yael.
No, go ahead.
It came at 3:27 from the shul.
Thank you.
Should I put it in I'll put it in the chat.
I was gonna say I could share it into the chat box if that's better.
I got it in here. Let's see.
Hi, Debbie.
Hiya. I'm downloading the source sheet. There we go.
we're all doing source sheets.
But you don't have to look yet.
Oh, okay.
Well, I learned how to download it on my computer while I'm Zooming. I feel like I'm in the
Wow.
21st century here.
I'm impressed, Deb.
Well done.
I put it in the chat.
Thank you.
We'll give folks another minute or two.
So what's new, everybody? Hi, Marianne.
Hey, Marianne. Oh, this is my comfort zone. Marianne in her blue room. Marianne was my chavritza for 2 years, so I'm so excited to get to see her in her local stomping grounds.
And it's nice to see you, but you're in a different spot than when we learned together.
I'm trying to find my best light.
Oh,
It's a struggle. We're working on it.
It's a good back. You got a good setup there. You got the plant.
And you got
Yeah,
Oh.
I was admitting to Tammy that I swept all of the mess under the table and I put the plant in.
but you have books, it's good.
Well, they're cookbooks, but that's okay, right?
That's
From
okay.
here, all I see are scholarly books. So it's
There
okay.
you go.
That would get a 10 out of
Scholarly book.
that would get a 10 out of 10 on the Twitter Zoom background rating. You guys know about that Twitter account?
No.
There's a Twitter account that just rates like media people's Zoom backgrounds and comments on them. It will say like,
great.
nice, you got nice placement of the plant and the window, and then it makes fun of some people, but they would like that one. They would say 10 out of 10.
Oh, good.
Oh, hey, Lorraine.
Hi.
Welcome.
And Marianne, you voted today, I saw. Good for you. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I mailed
Oh,
mine.
nice.
I
you
mailed
mailed
mine in 2 weeks ago, so.
So the Skokie Courthouse, great setup. They were
Okay.
so nice and efficient. And I normally I vote right behind my house at the Walker School. It's really nice. I walk over there. It's really great. But I was having such anxiety about worrying about election day that I just
Yeah.
decided to get rid of that anxiety and just get it over with.
good for you.
Well, I
I went
mailed
there
mine
too.
in, and I
and it
got
was
an
really great.
email confirmation that they got it. So
is difficult. And
I like that.
listen, now, here.
And everyone should know there's going to be another opportunity to vote for the new chairs at Skokie Valley. Stay tuned. You're going to get an email about times you can come in and test them out, sit in them, and then make your voice heard. Democracy in action. So multiple ways to express to shape the direction of our country and of our tuchuses at Skokie Valley.
Is it on Tuesday?
Paige, hi Paige.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
How are
Paige.
you?
Hey, wow, from Massachusetts.
From Vermont right now.
Vermont. It's a nice
Wow.
place to be hanging out.
Nice to see you guys.
So fun.
9044 Keller.
I used to live in Balakin when all of my worlds are coming together with Yael on your crew.
Oh, where did
And
you
Boston too, right?
Hi, Yael. You came after I left.
live? Oh, I'm sure. Well, I'm originally from Newton, so I heard you were in the Boston area. That's
I am in Cambridge. So see, all worlds come together.
Yeah.
Where did you live in Bala?
No, that was Skokie. Near the R6 station, right near Elisa Dianim.
Oh, I love Elisa Dianeum.
I know you do. She's my good friend. Anyway, I lived up the street from her, closer to the train station.
Oh, very nice.
Mhm.
And Yael, last Shabbos, we had lunch with Moshe and Lori Simkovich, and they gave us, when it's time to bench, they said, you have to have this bencher. And it was,
Very dear friends.
yes, that's what they told us.
Wonderful.
Oh wait, that's
So
another Boston connection.
already so many points of connections. Beautiful. I'm going to just briefly welcome Yael, and then the floor is yours. As I hope you got to watch the video. We spent a long time really rehearsing and practicing that video, as you could tell. But Yael Keller is a third-year student in Yeshivat Maharat. She studied at the Pardes Institute and at Brandeis, where she has a dual master's in Jewish studies and nonprofit management, or
Public policy and
Public
Jewish
policy.
professional leadership.
there we go. The Hornstein program, wonderful program. And I actually know Yael from work we did together many years ago. Uri Tzedek, Yael and I worked very closely together in launching that initiative. Yael was a staff member for Uri Tzedek. And so I've known Yael for a long time and can attest to her wisdom and integrity and passion for the Jewish people and for Torah and for all people. And it's just really a zchut to have you as our rabbinic intern this year. And please God, we'll have opportunities to connect in person as a rabbinic intern, but also to do this over Zoom, to learn together and to get to know you and you to get to know more people in our community. And it's a wonderful addition to our just learning lineup at the shul. We don't currently have a Parsha Shiur, so it's a great addition to our learning calendar, and we're grateful for that. And it's so good to be connecting to the Parsha each week, and we're really excited to do it with you.
Thank you so much, Ravari. Really, the privilege is definitely all mine that I got to work for Ravari in New York. Now, again, the opportunity has come up. I'm thrilled to be here with you guys. And I think that if there was to be a silver lining to the pandemic, it would be that I would only get to come probably 4 to 6 times to Chicago for a Shabbat, and it would be a lot of people and overwhelming. And in this way, we'll get to learn together, anyone who wants to come back every week to do Parsha. And I think, I hope that will be a nice longer term and like a deeper dive into getting to know people in your community. And so I'm super excited. And I hope that I'll get to really know you. So if you don't mind just saying your name, I hope you'll participate when you participate. If you feel comfortable turning on your camera, I welcome you into my kitchen. I'd love to see yours. And I hope that we'll get to a feel for what we want to learn together. So I don't have a strong plan for which direction to go every week, but I think we'll just look at the Parsha through different lenses, and we'll figure out the lenses we like the best, and we'll use those more often. So today I brought a midrash that I want us to look at in a few minutes. No need to open it yet, and try to unpack it because it's a dense midrash, and I think there's a lot that we can learn today, as well as about Abraham.
Oh, where's Michael?
So
I should tell Michael. She's teaching. I should tell Michael she's teaching midrash.
so If anyone, I'd love to hear your voices, but only when you're trying to participate. So if you don't mind muting, just when you're not, when you're listening, I
Got
would
it.
appreciate it.
Oops. Sorry, yeah, I just unmuted you. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll unmute yourself.
Look at the
I muted
power
everyone.
Rev Ari
Yeah,
wields.
So much power.
Amazing. So I thought we would start by asking a question. This week's Parsha is Lech Lecha, and the very first opening psukim are God's charge to Abraham, Lech Lecha, to leave his own land and to go to be with God, to lead the Jewish people, or the beginnings of the Jewish people. And there's a question that honestly had never occurred to me. Maybe it's I'm the product of my Jewish day school upbringing, or I don't have as creative of a mind, but it never occurred to me to ask why Abraham. Right, if we think back to last week's Parsha and Parshat Noach, the Torah is pretty explicit about why God chose Noach, right? It says Noach, ish tzaddik tamim haya b'dor atav. Noach was a tzaddik. So we know why God chose to pick Noach to lead his family onto the Teva, the ark, and then start the world over again. And later on with Moshe, it doesn't explicitly list out his characteristics, but we get to see his upbringing. We see his birth. We see his, life in the palace and his standing up to injustice by standing up for the Jewish man who's being attacked by the Egyptian man. We see his hardships. We see him come back. We see his conversation with God about whether he's fit to lead and what he can bring to the table. And with Abraham, really, there's none of that. We step into the story when Abraham is already a grown person, and we start right away with what God wants Abraham to do. So the Midrash is seeking to understand why Abraham. So if everyone can pull up, is everyone able to pull up the source sheet? I think Rev Ari put it in the chat box as well. Does anyone need me to reshare? Okay, I'm going to assume silence is not confusion. Is that right? So quiet.
No, sorry. It would be, you could also share your desktop if you wanted to.
I'm happy to. Would people like that?
I think it's a little easier for some to follow along rather than pull it out of chat, but that's just my
I'll
opinion.
tell you the reason I actually love it is because I get to control how much of the source sheet everyone looks at. There's no like flipping ahead. It's whatever is on my screen. Wonderful. So if people feel comfortable, I would love for my voice not to be the only one. And one way to do that is to have other people read. So if someone would like to, maybe I'll start reading here and then I'll ask someone to take over on the next source. So the Midrash starts by quoting the pasuk of the opening pasuk of our parsha, Vayomer Hashem el Avram lech lecha me'artzecha, right? God said to Abraham, go forth from your land. And then we see here, Rabbi Yitzchak opens with a pasuk from Tehillim, and then he says, who is Abraham? Abraham is someone who could be compared to echad shahaya over mimakom lemakom, someone who is going from place to place. V'ra'a bira achat doleket, and he sees a bira that is doleket. And those words are the words that we're going to have to sort of pull apart. A bira, this could be a whole different Parsha Shiur. A bira is commonly translated as a palace. It might actually be more like a tenement apartment building, like a high rise, but it's some kind of big, maybe grand building, and it's doleket. Can anyone offer a wager as to what doleket might mean, what verb it comes from? Or
burning, radlik.
Excellent, thank you. Burning. Anyone have another option?
Delek.
And what would that mean? Excellent.
I mean, gasoline.
Gasoline. So that also could be, oh gosh, I lost myself here. That could also be burning. Or it could be like a glow. Like if you think of a fireplace, I think that's a good example, right? A fire in a fireplace makes the room feel aglow. A fire in the forest, like in California, unfortunately, is all too real right now, is a blaze. And so there is maybe some nuance there that we can explore. so we see that the fire, he sees a castle or a bira that is doleket. And the person who's wandering says, Amar, Tomar shehebira hazo below manhig. He notices, like, is it possible that this castle or this big building lacks a person to look after it, like a super, right? A superintendent. Heitzitz alav bal habira, amar lo ani hu bal habira. And the owner of the building looks at him and says to him, I am the master of this castle. And so Rabbi Yitzchak compares Abraham to this wandering man who happens upon this bira doleket. And he says, right, Kach lefisha haya Abraham. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm having trouble with my mouse and it keeps, might have to call my husband in for tech, which would be so embarrassing. Here it is. Okay. Right, he says, Kach lefisha haya avinu Abraham omer tomar shaha'olam hazeh belo manhig. Abraham looks up around the world and says, is it possible that really no one is watching over this world? There's no superintendent for the world. Heitzitz alav hakadosh baruch hu va'amar lo ani hu ba'al ha'olam, right? And God steps up and says, I am the master of the universe. And then there are some Tehillim that sort of back Rabbi Yitzchak up, but that's the story. So according to the Midrash, this is the answer. Why Abraham? Oh, because Abraham is like a man who was wandering around and saw a burning building and asked who was responsible for it. And the owner of the building said, I am responsible. So I wonder if anyone has any impressions. Like, does this answer the question for you? What about it maybe is starting to answer the question?
Why is God's world burning or glowing?
Excellent. What do you think? I'm sorry, when I share my screen, I can't see everyone. So if you could just say your name, I'm going to try to remember people.
It's Jonathan. I in Evanston. I don't. If I were to describe, think of many words to characterize God's creation, which Abraham is observing and analyzing and trying to locate and identify and figure out who's in charge here. Glow, an ember glowing, burning would not at all be the adjective I would think of.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Is that, and I think that is a piece of why people, some scholars are resistant to the idea of it being burning, and they prefer that it be a glow. And we'll see, maybe we'll go right into it unless someone has a burning thing, and you should just feel free to jump right in if you'd like, into the Rashi, because the Rashi, I think, maybe tries to tease that apart, Jonathan. Does someone want to read? It can be in English or in Hebrew, the Rashi that's right here, option number 1 on the screen.
You have to show us, right? We can't
You have to
scroll.
unmute.
Scroll down a little bit, Yael.
Oh, can you see better now? Where it says Rashi because Abraham. Can you see where my cursor is?
No, you need to scroll down.
Yeah, I can't scroll. She has to scroll.
Oh, this is her. This is.
Oh no, I can see it on my screen. Oh, can you? You can only see the screen.
Yael. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Okay, hold on. I'm just, man, honey, they only see your screen. This was my copy with my little notes, but I'm just going to delete them so no one can peer inside my mind. So, okay, so let's look at Rashi here. That's perfect. And I can make it a little bigger. I'm sorry, I usually make it bigger. I was looking in 2 places. Okay, would someone like to read the Rashi?
Yael, make it 125 because we can't read the script on the right.
Let's see, we're going to get better at this. It's too big or too small now?
Too large. Go to 125. Yeah.
Is that better?
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
Perfect. Is it possible that there's a script and it does not have a superintendent?
Hello? Whoops.
Okay, we're going to get better at this. We're going to try. We're going to persevere. So we're going to read, we're starting right here because Abraham, our forefather, said. Does someone want to read that piece there?
I'm happy to read.
Excellent.
Because Abraham, our forefather, said, is it possible that world lacks a person to look after it? He saw heaven and earth. He saw the sun by day and the moon by night, and stars shining. He thought, is it possible that such a great thing could be without its having a guide? Whereupon God looked out at him and announced, I am the owner of the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Right. So I think that Rashi is trying to describe the aglow way of thinking about this, Jonathan. So not to say it's like an ember, but to say that Abraham was the first person to look up at the world and say, wow, like this is so beautiful, and someone must have made this. Who could have made such a thing? And the Rambam, who I did not bring because it's very, very long, sort of talks about how before Abraham, there really were, people just assumed that the stars were their own deity. And so everything had sort of created its own self, its own divine being. And it hadn't occurred to anyone yet that there was sort of one master of the universe, one God above. And so Rashi is saying Abraham was that person who saw the world aglow. He's in that way, I think it's actually meant to be a beautiful thing. And Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, in his book Between God and Man, picks up on that and keeps pulling at that thread. Does someone want to read there, and then maybe we'll reflect for a minute?
I can read. Can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you.
Lift up your eyes on high. Religion is the result of what man does with his ultimate wonder, with the moments of awe, with the sense of mystery. How did Abraham arrive at his certainty that there is a God who is concerned with the world? According to the rabbis, Abraham may be compared to a man who was traveling from place to place when he saw a palace full of light. Is it possible that there is no one who cares for the palace, he wondered, until the owner of the palace looked at him and said, I am the owner of the palace. Similarly, Abraham, our father, wondered, is it conceivable that the world is without a guide? The Holy One, blessed be he, looked out and said, I am the guide, the sovereign of the world. It is a wonder that Abraham's quest for God began.
Thank you. Beautiful, right? So I think here, Doleket is the wonder, right? It was in wonder that Abraham's quest for God began, and that religion is the result of what we do with this wonder and this awe, right? And I think that today that's an important thing to do when the world feels like a little bit falling apart, maybe for some, health concerns, political concerns, whatever they are, that we continue to look at the world with wonder and to find the things that are beautiful, and that and to recognize that they are being orchestrated by God, that there's a divine place for the wonder, and then to figure out what to do with it. How do we channel that wonder into something that is positive for our communities, for ourselves, for the world?
Yael, I think this is a good and correct reading, but I also think simultaneously that the other good and correct reading is the one that you also mentioned about the world being on fire and ablaze and burning down.
Excellent, excellent. And even Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel would admit that it is a bit of a stretch to read it this way. So I think I agree with you. I think that there is, I'm gonna show the next source, because I think that Rabbi Shai Held, who runs a wonderful learning program, Hadar, in New York, wrote a beautiful essay a few years back about this, and he acknowledges, right, that really there's a different word for aglow, and that's me'uberet. It would have said habira me'uberet, not habira doleket. And so he says, maybe Rabbi Heschel moves towards aglow because he so much wants that wonder and that beauty to be at the center of why Abraham is the chosen leader, but that it's not entirely accurate to the text. And I would say it's in 2020, it's not entirely accurate to our reality in the world. And so certainly let's explore, let's move with that let's transition to option number 2. Would you like to read Rabbi Held's paragraph there aloud for us?
Even if it does not motivate this midrash, wonder at the beauty of the universe and gratitude towards its creator is the other pole of Jewish faith. Zev Wolf Einhorn, a 19th century commentator, expresses this well. Avram, he writes, is like a person who sees a beautiful building and realizes that it must have had both a wise architect and a devoted owner. But Since it is being left to burn, he imagines it to have been abandoned. Here, Avram senses order and confronts chaos at the very same time. Like many of us, he discerns powerful reasons to believe and powerful reasons not to. And it is precisely this honesty that leads God to embrace him as a covenantal partner.
And the bolding is mine, but I felt like that was sort of the turning point from option 1 to option 2, right? There's this desire to say that wonder at the beauty of the universe and gratitude to its creator is a pole of Judaism. And I think many of us would agree, but at the same time, it's almost like Abraham can't sit there and look at the beauty of the building without saying, well, hey, wait a second, it's on fire right now. Like, it's on fire. Let's call the police department or the fire department, right? You can't talk about how beautiful the bricks are while you watch the flames leap out the window. And that ability to hold that cognitive dissonance of wanting to appreciate the wonder of the world and also the dumpster fire of it all is what led God to embrace Abraham as a covenantal partner. And so I think that this is maybe the first way we can unpack the Midrash to say why Abraham, because Abraham was able to hold two truths at one time, and that's a really hard thing to do.
The picture painted by many of the rabbinic sources, I think particularly of the famous Midrash of Abraham smashing the idols, and then of his parents and the people around him saying, you must have done that because they can't do that themselves. And he says, well, when they're powerless, they're just idols. That's dopey. I've always felt the picture painted of the world into which Avram was born, which I remember my parents teaching me actually on the south side of Chicago decades ago. And my father actually was a student of Rabbi Heschel's when Heschel first came to the United States in Cincinnati, and also was his personal secretary.
Wow.
I remember learning this midrash then and thinking, not many years later, this is ridiculous. The family and the environment into which Avram was born cannot have been that ignorant and superficial as to be able to be tricked and surmounted in such an obvious way. The idea that the world has some unity and integrity shouldn't have been a huge insight. Other people must have thought that. And the idea that these physical idols that were worshipped can't smash each other, pshita. I mean, that they can't have been that dumb.
Sure, definitely. Look, I think part of what the Midrash is doing is it paints itself in extremes to help portray a message, right? Of course, right? On some level, everyone knows the things that they do that are sort of magical thinking or, hopeful are not reality, but sometimes people cling to them. And sometimes if we're trying to highlight the differences, we make them look even more foolish and maybe ourselves look even more enlightened. But certainly I take your point. I don't think Abraham was the first, but I think that perhaps in the second reading, you might identify more with Abraham and the read of the world at that time to say that it's not all of them being unaware and Abraham being so enlightened, that there's sort of like a middle space, but Abraham is the first to talk about it. And that I think might be true. So Rabbi Jonathan Sachs takes a very different read. And this is from his book, which was published in 2000. But it is, he has written about it since, and this is really strongly resonating with Rabbi Sachs over the last few years. Because Rabbi Sachs feels clear that this is about the world on fire. It's not a glow, there's nothing happy here. This is about like a disaster time and Abraham's reaction to such a disaster. Right. But he too feels the need to start. I think it's interesting to start in that place of a glow, right? He says, Abraham's bewilderment is clear. The sensitive human being gazes at a brilliantly structured universe, a splendid piece of art. He's overwhelmed by the grandeur of a sunset and the miracle of childbirth. He marvels at the roaring ocean waves and at the silent, steady beat of the human heart. The world is indeed a palace, right? It is a birah, but the palace is in flames. The world is full of bloodshed, injustice, and strife. Thugs, abusers, rapists, kidnappers, killers are continuously demolishing the palace, turning our world into an ugly, tragic battlefield of untold pain and horror. Right? And I think that if we think about the world in flames, if you think about the brief history that we know of the world before Abraham, right? Abraham must have thought God created Gan Eden, this beautiful place for Adam and Chava to live, and they sin pretty quickly and they get kicked out. And then they have two children who should live side by side happily serving God, but of course Cain, we know, kills Hevel. And then God decides to start again. There's too many fires to put out, and so he causes a flood. God causes a flood, and Noah, continues the world. And then after Noah, again with Migdal Bavel, God has to intervene, has to start maybe stamping out some fires. And so I could see how the continuous tragedy of human error could feel like fire to Abraham. Right, and so Abraham then he's confused, but he does not walk away, right? He's confused and he confronts it. He says, what happened to the owner of the palace? Not like, surely someone must be in charge of this, right? Not as you're saying, Jonathan, not saying, oh, everyone else thinks that this is an ownerless palace and I'm the first to recognize it has an owner, but I seem to be the first to notice that right now that owner is being negligent. Right? Why does God allow man to destroy his world? Why does God permit such a beautiful place to go up in flames? Could God have made a world only to abandon it? What would anyone build a palace and then desert it? Note that the owner of the palace, I think here Rabbi Sachs makes a beautiful point, does not make an attempt to get out of the burning building or to extinguish the flames, right? We don't meet the owner as he's rushing back with pails of water or emptying his suitcases into his car. He is merely stating that he is the owner and that he of the palace that is going up in smoke. It is as if instead of racing out, the owner were calling for help. God made the palace, man set it on fire, and only man can put out the flames. Abraham asks God, where are you? God replies, I'm here. Where are you? Right? And then man says, why did you abandon the world? And God asks man, why did you abandon me? And I think that in that relationship, that's very powerful, right? God is not saying, I'm the owner of the palace and that's it. In the Midrashic mind, perhaps he's saying, now it's your turn, right? I'm the owner, but you set it on fire. You've got to put out the fire now. And that relationship is the key component to Abraham's uniqueness, that he's willing to enter into this dialogue with God and to perhaps take responsibility, to pick up, to say, okay, I'm ready. Like, where's the bucket? Let's get to putting out the fires together. And that's the Abraham we see with Sodom and Gomorrah, right? That's the Abraham we see who rescues Lot, the Abraham who stands up to injustice. And to not leave Rabbi Heschel looking like he misunderstood the word doleket, I did bring a brief quote from another book where he talks about the palace on fire again. And I think that here he notes the duality of the experience, right? Those who sense the ultimate questions in moments of wonder, in moments of joy, and those who sense the ultimate question in moments of horror, in moments of despair. And it is both the grandeur and the misery of living that make man sensitive to the ultimate question. And then he quotes the Midrash again, which I cut out. We've already read it twice. The world is inflamed, consumed by evil. Is it possible that there is no one who cares? And I think that for Abraham, that's a powerful image, to think of him staring at horror as the world sort of feels like it's crumbling around him and no one is doing anything. And Abraham somehow manages to step up. And I think of that as a sort of paralyzed feeling. And so to sort of round out this section and end this option, I brought Rabbi Getzel Davis. He's a wonderful educator at Harvard Hillel. And I think he reimagined what it would look like to stand at a burning castle. And that was very helpful for me. So does someone want to read here at Like Moses' Burning Bush?
Can you make it a wee bit bigger?
Yes, I would be happy to. Is that better?
It's getting there. Would you like me to read it?
Please.
I'm getting close. Like Moses' burning bush, the burning world is a wake-up call. Perhaps we, like Abraham, can encounter God amidst destruction? How long does it take to stare at a burning bush and realize that it has not been consumed? 3 minutes? 7 minutes? If most people were walking down a street and saw a burning bush or a burning garbage can, they would either keep walking or run to put it out. But both Moses and Abraham stopped to gaze and listen to the destruction, and both of them found God.
And both Moses and Abraham, Moshe and Abraham, confronted and argued with God, which Noach didn't. And that's why Noach may have been a tzaddik in his generation, but wouldn't have been in their generations, because Abraham said, "Hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat." I'm not going to let you, God, get away with something that I personally, as a frail mortal human being, find unjust and unfair. So the commentators who are saying God chose Abraham because he was a tough customer and knew how to stand up and get involved and confront what was going on are vindicated by the rest of this week and next week's Parsha.
Definitely.
So I have a question.
Please.
What about the possibility that people of that generation, those two generations, would have walked right by this destruction and not taken the personal interest to do anything? And here, Moshe and Abraham actually stopped to watch. Maybe that made them different from the other people of their generation.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think the awareness, I 100% agree. Corinne, is that how you pronounce it?
Corinne.
Corinne, that is powerful, right? So why is Abraham a candidate? Not because he sees the wonder of the world, but because he sees the burning of the world and he does not keep walking. That's huge. I think that's a hard thing to do. As someone who often says, like, we just have to turn off the news, I can't anymore, right? What would it mean to stare into the fire instead of turning away? Beautiful. Excellent. So far, this is, I would say, a model that that has two polar answers, right? Either the world is beautiful and Abraham recognizes that and that makes him a valid candidate, or the world is terrible and either Abraham stands up where Noach is passive, or he just acknowledges the pain of others instead of walking away. But I want to offer one last option that it just is like in a totally different direction, and I think is, especially at a time again where it does feel like there are a lot of fires going, is maybe hopefully a little bit instructive. And so this is from the Sfat Emet. Let's see, we'll read my note together. That the Sfat Emet is Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh Leib Alter, who's a Hasidic Rebbe who lived in the late 1800s. And he wrote a beautiful commentary on the Parsha called the Sfat Emet, and I just brought the translation by Rabbi Art Green. And the Sfat Emet, we'll leave my questions behind. The Sfat Emet writes that a person is essentially set aright when he forgets the vanities of the world. Forget your people, and remembers that he is sent into this world to do God's bidding. Abraham was the first to cast all vanities aside and thus to draw light into the world. And so here, what I love that the Sfat Emet is doing is he's connecting the Lech Lecha charge to the idea of the Bira Hadoleket, right? He's saying that casting the vanities of the world aside was when God said, Lech lecha me'artzecha me'moladetcha me'avicha, right? Beit avicha. You have to leave your family who worships idols. You have to leave your home place. You have to leave all the things that are familiar to you that are not serving your ability to do God's bidding in the world, and you have to go. And Abraham is the first person who's able to do that. And he draws light into the world. And I don't think that that's a play on this me'uberet doleket explanation, but it reminded me of that. And then he turns to the castle. This is the meaning of the burning castle. This whole world was created only so that its vanities be forgotten and negated. This is the world's true fulfillment, since it is a corridor that leads into the great hall, right? The idea that this world is a prosdor, a hallway into Olam Haba, the great hall. It is the will of the castle's owner that it be burned and consumed. Right, so here it is no longer the sin of man. It is no longer a world out of control. This is, I would say, it's almost like a controlled burn. I traveled to India and I saw them burning the fields. They do it to enrich their plants. I think they do it in many other places, and it's a thing to be seen. Right, this is a controlled burn. It's to burn and consume all of the vanities of the world. Thus it is with a candle. The white hovers over a black consuming fire. The more the black fire consumes, the more the white light burns. And I think what the Sfat Emet is saying is that it's not only that they didn't look away, it's that they didn't have to rush to put it out. Sometimes we have to be able to embrace the destruction of things that are not important and not serving us, to have that white light, that pure energy that burns above, that rises above. And so sometimes we look at the world and think, oh my gosh, what a fire in a trash can on the side of the road, when we should be thinking, wow, like what can I pitch in there? What don't I need? What can I lose in that fire? And what will I be able to walk away with a little bit lighter, a little bit more ready to do God's bidding in the world? And so Avraham was able to see the Birah HaDoleket and recognize its value, not just push back against God, but to appreciate the fire, as it were.
The Sfas Emes so often speaks to the reader, almost individual to individual. You are Avraham, you are Moshe, you are Devorah, you are Korach. You know, what does this mean to you? How is your life like the lives of our ancestors and forefathers and foremothers? I wonder what the Sfas Emes does with Ayeka, which is a perfect place for Sfas Emesizing.
Yeah, I don't know, but I agree. So I think some of the questions that I was left with, that I don't know if we're able to answer them, but I think it's interesting to note that Abraham was wandering when he found God, and that maybe those of us who wander a bit through life, I am pretty type A, not really one of the wanderers, to be totally transparent, but many who are, right, that's when he was able to see God, to find the Birah HaDoleket, and the same thing for Moshe with the burning bush. And if there's a connection, maybe when we're in somewhere where we're outside of our comfort zone, when we Lech Lecha, when we leave the things that aren't serving us behind, is when we're able to see the wonder, also to see the fire, to see the destruction. And that maybe there's something in that about opening ourselves up to the world around us. And also remembering that, the world is not always on fire. Sometimes it's a glow. And it's hard to sometimes remember that there's a difference between the two. You see the fire and you leap to put it out. Sometimes it's a positive fire, sometimes it's a glow, and we don't have to always rush to call the fire department the second we see the fire start to rage. I'm happy to open up to further discussion if anyone has thoughts.
The other Hasidic commentary that often has a similar rhythm and resonance to the Sfas Emes is the Eish Kodesh. I wonder what the Eish Kodesh says about fire.
So the Eish Kodesh, interestingly, it happens to be something we're learning in the yeshiva this year, was a pulpit rabbi. And back then, pulpit rabbis got the whole month of Cheshvan off. And so there is not as much commentary in the Eish Kodesh about these early Parshiot as there is about later Parshiot, because he often, I think, was on vacation at this time. So even though we learn the Eish Kodesh every week, we actually didn't learn anything related directly to Lech Lecha this week, but I could look and see. I'm sure there must be at least one or two.
I think it's interesting that Abraham has in Lech Lecha itself, and also some midrashim further back at the end of Noach, that fire seems to be a theme of his life. We always think that it's only Moshe, but at the end of Noach, where we have the genealogy, and we have this discussion of Nahor, who is Avram's brother, and this midrash that Nimrod the king has them all come and walk through fire, and his brother dies, but Avraham is like purified by the fire and he's okay. And then also later on in the Parsha, we have the Brit Ben Abitarim, and we have this flaming oven. So there's something about that theme of like this, as you talked about, that controlled burn, that purifying fire that seems to be hanging around or burning a lot in a lot of Abraham's life, showing up in different places. But I just think it's interesting that that theme keeps showing up for him.
Yeah, even I'm thinking the Akedah, right? Yitzchak says, "Where is the Aish?" Right? Where's the fire for that?
Where's the fire, and where's the animal?
Yeah, fire. I think definitely the Midrash associates Abraham with fire. Which, yeah, go ahead.
Also in the Brit Ben Abitarim, which we have here, we have the reference to kind of the foreshadowing of going down and being slaves in Egypt, which is often called like the Kor HaBarzel, like this metal flaming thing that's gonna purify us. And so there's just like something about it. But even fire is a good thing, like an idea of like a flame representing the soul of human beings, or and all that stuff. So yeah.
And there's something I think very entrancing about a fire. My family goes camping a lot, and the kids love to sit around the fire and just stare in, right?
Something that was especially helpful for me tonight was that we see, especially I think from one of the readings that you shared from Rabbi Heschel, that it's not that the two readings are either or, but that it's a both and.
Yes. Yes, and I love that Rabbi Held, building off of Rabbi Heschel, right, says that it is it's Abraham's ability to sense order and confront chaos at the same time, right? That it is this or, it is this and, not or here, and that is so important because that's a really hard thing to do, but it is the world that we live in and that everyone lives in. Definitely. Wonderful. I'm not sure how long I was supposed to go, but I was aiming for about 45 minutes. So I think unless anyone has last questions, I will tell you next week we're going to talk about laughter. So it'll be a much more lighthearted topic. If you like Mary Poppins, come ready to sing along. There'll be a sing along component to next week. So I hope that I'll get to see everyone again and again, and we'll get to know each other more. But I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for coming. I know you don't know me, so it's harder to force yourself onto Zoom.
We're coming to know you, and your Torah and your spirit are really both wonderful. And of course, we are now living through an unprecedented, at least in our lifetimes, world of fire and flame and fever. So God willing, not for too much longer.
I mean, Jonathan, do you have a sister named Siona?
Lives in Evanston, and my father was a well-known rabbi on the South Side and in Highland Park and at Yale.
My mother is Esther Fine, Sharon and Judy and Miriam Fine's sister. I think that she was friends with your sister.
Maybe.
But she grew up on the South Side.
Father were both only sons, so the relevant.
Oh, you don't have a sister. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning.
I have a brother and a stepsister, but my father and his father didn't have siblings, so I have lots of relatives, but almost none of them are named Wolf.
Oh, must be a different person. Funny.
But there are lots of great Wolves around Chicago. Anyway, this was extremely valuable and helpful, and I will carry it into Shabbat morning.
Oh, thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope to see you again next Thursday.
Thank you, Yael.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. I'm not sure how to stop it.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom. Nice to meet you, Corinne.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yasher koach.
Thank you. All right, let's see. Now I have to come back here. All right, Shabbat shalom.